Welcome, everyone. Today we have a very special guest. This is Jesse, and he loves to serve his community and specifically concentrating on the construction and trade space. And he's also an author of a wonderful book that we're going to talk about today called Lean in Love, the five S's, the five S love letters, and looking into how your relationships create ripples of impact. And so we're going to dive a little bit into this and talk about exactly what Jesse does and how he supports mental health overall, right? So, welcome, Jesse.
Hello, thank you, Miss Jezel. I'm super excited. I even put on a nice shirt for this
Looks
one because
good.
it's
Looks,
special. Thank
I
you.
know, I noticed. Very good. So tell the audience a little bit about you, about how this book, how did author Jesse, come about, and let us know a little bit about the concept of your wonderful book here.
Yes, thank you. So I began my career as a plumber. So I'm a second generation plumber. Been in construction since the 1900s, Giselle, since 1995. For
Wow.
some people, that's like, wow, that's so long ago. Like, no, it wasn't. Um, so I think that's really important to me because that's the root of how I gained an appreciation for mental health and mental wellness because the way I functioned, the only coping mechanisms I had was to self-medicate through substance abuse and this sort of thing. And because of the nature of the work and kind of the conditions and mentality, when I say mentality, I feel, or maybe for clarification, like there's this masculine macho mentality that I subscribe to, that many of us in the industry subscribe to, that doesn't lend itself to self-care. Like
Mm,
self-care is a ridiculous notion. And I say that not as a critic, but as a practitioner of undermining what that could really mean. And so, because of my coping mechanisms and the way things were, the way I decided to function, what really suffered were my relationships.
mm,
And what I've discovered here in the last few years is how valuable and nurturing relationships can be. Whereas my thinking was that relationships or the people that I was having relationships with were a detractor from me being an effective employee or foreman or superintendent or whatever manager. And it turns out when I shifted my thinking, it's helped me realize like, no, it's actually the relationships that provide the fertile ground for immense growth and understanding and more meaningful ways to contribute. Now, that didn't happen from one year to the next. That's started been happening for a very long time. And the book, Lean in Love, was I had no intention of writing the book. Um, and what happened was I was dating someone and our relationship dissolved because of work. And my part of it was exactly that. I was not, and probably still am not, willing to sacrifice or recommit the time and effort that I apply into my projects and my ideas and stuff and put that towards a romantic relationship. Now, what was awesome, like not just awesome, but like super profound, is the woman I was dating at the time. She knew that lean. So lean, I started, like I said, started in the trades. I got introduced to continuous improvement through the last planner system. And then from there, expanded my knowledge to all kinds of different systems within the lean space, which is about continuous improvement.
yeah.
Um, and she knew like that was my job at the time. I was a regional lean manager for a gigantic construction company in the United States. And so what she did was instead of like the typical approach where you kind of blame each other or and punish each other with these weird little punishments, cut it silent treatment and stuff, she was she was much wiser. And so what she did was she took a system. So one of the systems is the 5S system, which it's come from the manufacturing space. It's starting to get practice in the construction space little by little. And it's a system for surfacing problems and maybe optimizing your workspace or a workspace.
Mhm.
Uh, and so it's the 5 S's are sort,
Mhm.
set, shine, standardize, sustain. And we can apply that. Like think about your garage or that one drawer that you have at home, the cajon, right? The one that has everything in it.
Yeah.
There's a way to invest, right? Take out the stuff that's not like, or just think about your desk. The things that you don't need, get rid of them. The things that you do need, they need to have a place to go. So you set those in order. Sort, get rid of the junk, set, find a place for everything and make sure it's clear where everything goes. Shine, you clean it up at the end of the day every day to make sure like, oh, things are out of order. Let's put them back in place. Standardize would be having a template and saying, this is the way it's supposed to look. So if I forget, I go on vacation, come back, oh yeah, that's my layout. Let me do that. And then sustain is what is like the auditing function or the frequency that we're going to come back and check and make sure those things are in place.
Yeah.
So super like
Simple.
practical, yeah,
Yeah.
and organized. Well, these it sounds easy. It's much more difficult to do it in the workplace. And then when you start inviting people in, the relationship dynamics come into play and all this other stuff. So, it's work. It takes work to make it happen, but there's amazing results that can come from it. Well, what she did was she knew that this is part of my love language, right? Of continuous improvement. So she took the ideas of that system or the basics of that system and contextualized those 5 S's to our personal relationship. And
Wow.
so, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean that right there is very intuitive and just for her to do that, to take something that she knows that she's going to get your attention with this, and put it in, like say, okay, this is what he loves, so let's put it and apply it to our relationship. I mean, amazing. Very, very smart. She's a very smart woman for
She's
sure.
amazing. Yeah, total. And I was like, she gave me the letters, and and like this is serious. I remember reading them, and my brain was like, "Wow, this is amazing. This is going to help so many people because a lot of us, for people that think in logic, rather let's say swim in logic,
Hmm.
this is a game changer. For people that swim in heart, they wonder, why the hell do I have to paint a picture for you? Like, don't you just feel? Like, no, I don't just feel. I
Right.
think. I think more than I feel. I feel sometimes, but I think more than I feel. And that's kind of how I function. I'm in the thinking space most of the time, feeling space, not so much.
Hmm.
And that's not a bad thing, but this is a bridge for us to communicate. So, for example, sort,
Hmm.
what she wrote, and here's a picture like we drew. Jennifer Lacey was
Oh, so she was the artist?
she was the artist. Yeah, Jennifer
Oh, I
drew
didn't
all.
know that. Okay.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Jennifer did all the illustrations in
That's
here.
cool. How cute. And I love that about the book. I love the illustrations. Yeah.
they're fun little characters that we drew up or she drew up along the way. And so sort again in the workspace is like get rid of the unnecessary items, the unnecessary things. And that's we kind of know, right? If it's my desk, I don't need if it's my truck, I don't need a loaf of bread in the truck. I take it down. Kind of silly, but how does that apply to our personal relationships? So
Uh-huh.
the way she contextualized that was on the first S, which is sort, is discard any jealousy or distrust. How many
Big
of our
one.
relations, right?
Big one. Like, wow. I mean, and that's like just going right in there, right into the meat of it too. I mean, she wasn't tiptoeing either.
Mm-mm.
She wasn't tiptoeing around these hard emotions. She went right in there.
Right out of the gate,
Yep.
discard fear and doubt. And so again,
Hmm.
another just credit I need to give her is she wasn't writing like all of this wasn't for just me to discard. It was for both of us. So on one hand, she was saying, "Hey, let's work on this. Like you need to work on it," but also her taking ownership and saying, "I need to work on this too." So this is a mutual agreement. And so it's
Yeah.
discard fear and doubt. Like how many times do we allow fear and doubt to creep in and undermine the joy that we're experiencing in a relationship?
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. And the thing that I love about it is that it's applies to relationships, but this applies to your relationship with yourself as well. And that's
Yes.
the way I took it, because we a lot of times do not take the time to reflect and put a mirror in front of us and say, hey, what do I need to sort in my life right now? What isn't serving me? And to sit and think about these different things, these emotion provoking, feelings, and think about what it is that's going on in your personal life that could be causing a lot of, for instance, discord, either with
Mhm.
yourself or even with your destination where you're going. If you are not in tune with who you are, or if you're not aligned with who you're supposed to be, there's going to be a lot of this baggage in your life. And so it's really good to reflect and eliminate all of that clutter and to
Yes.
see yourself for who you truly are, and raw and honest as well. That's what I took from this. And I really also like, after each chapter, you do a summary, like a reflection, where you
Yes.
have, write down, what is bringing you grief. And so, you write that down. What is stealing your time? What have you been avoiding? So it really helps to prompt, um, this thought provoking reflection with yourself. Of course, you can apply it like you did in your relationship, but when you start applying it to yourself,
Oh,
the way
girl.
I see it as a psychiatric nurse practitioner in the mental health space, when I went through this book, I'm like, I just felt like everyone needs to go through this process, because we all have emotional baggage. We all
Totally.
carry that with us in the relationship with ourselves, but in with others. So whether that's a emotional relationship, a like a sensual relationship, or whether it's a coworker or friend, that type of relationship, a familial relationship,
Mhm.
um, all of these relationships, we really need to take a step back and say, well, you're the common denominator in those relationships. And so if you can't work on yourself and go through these steps to figure out if there are troubles in your relationships, what those troubles are, or what those problem points are, and you just keep ignoring them and pushing them down, right? Like you're talking about the logic
Yep.
part, right?
Yep.
They just keep getting worse. And what happens? You end up isolating yourself. You end up not having strong relationships with people, and that is not a good place to be. That can, lead to mental illness, depression, isolation,
Absolutely.
anxiety, social anxiety. Um, so I'm not sure if you realize what you did here when you,
No.
or what she realized what was going on here. But in essence, when you take these 5 S's, you not only are applying them to your work, right? Like you said, it's very practical in a workspace. It's practical at home, like you said, cleaning your garage, cleaning my desk. I didn't even think of it for something like that, but yes, it's very practical in those things. But when you take that and go into a deeper level, such as you did, it really opens up term emotional intelligence, and this idea of
Mm.
emotional intelligence, where once you start digging in to who you are in relationships and going through each of these steps, you really start to understand what emotions drive you, what emotions are hindering you, and not only that, but recognizing them, understanding them, and going through like, where are they coming from? So you become an observer of your emotions, and then also learn, there's a part in here where it talks about boundaries, so once you figure that out, hello, how do we get rid of that, right? And so
Yes.
setting boundaries. So all of these things, I mean, I was just blown away with this book, and that's why I had to have you on. Um, because I wanted to talk about, like, man, how did you, get into this? And now you're in mental health now, that, right? You're not just, in the construction and trade business. You're in the mental health business.
Yeah, I the all for clarity, at best, my best day, I'm a plumber. Like, beyond that, everything else, I am not a therapist. I discovered, like you said, an ability to serve on a different arena, on a different level. And so what I mean by that is, like, the fact that I came from the trades and and lived both, like most of my life, most of my time thus far was been on the suffering side of it, right? The thing we're all talking about, I was living in that. And because of the relationships that I've been able to develop and so forth, I can now see like, let's, there's a different way. Let me embody that. Let me demonstrate that for people. And when there's time to talk, I mean, it's been amazing where several of the forward thinking leaders that I serve out there, one of the things that they point out, I'm like, what is it? Like, why'd you pick me? Because I'm kind of crazy, loose cannon, wild most of the time. And their response is, it's because our people can relate to you. Like your style and the fact that you've lived it
Yeah.
is why we are picking you. And I'm like, oh, so I kind of got street cred. Like that's how
Right.
Jesse and Jesse, like, I got street cred. I'll take that because
Yeah.
I lived it. And like again, the thing, I had the letters.
Hmm.
Jezel, I had those letters for about 3.5 years
Wow.
before we did the live streams, because
Oh,
I knew they
wow.
were going to be powerful. Like I just like spend these things, and I would
Hmm.
share it with people. I would bounce it off, and some people are like, "Jess, you're crazy. You and your damn lean stuff, right?" And I'm like, no, no, no. Like forget that. Like look at this. Anyhow, finally, I was Jennifer and I had connected. We got into this live, podcasting, live streaming thing. And I said, Jen, like, I have an idea. Let's have a conversation about how these letters apply to us personally and professionally. And we'll just have a live stream with it. And people showed up. And that was like, whoa, wait a minute, what's happening here? And people said, hey, like the people that would show up for the live stream, they said, hey, we don't want to hear about the job site in the office. We want to talk about more, like they want to talk. They weren't talking, me and Jen were talking, but they
Yeah.
wanted to hear the more vulnerable, more authentic, more real, raw, personal stuff. So
Yeah.
we said, okay, well, let's do that. And then after that, I was working on my first book. Um, and I was like, wait a minute, we can turn this into somebody reached out. Actually, it was Kirby Coates reached out to me and she's like, hey, Jess, I wish I didn't have to watch 8 hours of video to take out the nuggets and the highlights of what was shared during the live stream. And I'm like, oh, well, I got them transcribed, right? Because when I produce my content, there's a transcription function. I said, I'll find them. And I spent about 10 minutes reading. And I said, okay, I'm not going to find them because I'm not going to read everything. And then I said, well, wait a minute. They're all transcribed. We should be able to turn this into a book. And so I reached out to Princess Kim, who was helping me with my book. And I said, hey, got an idea? Is it crazy? She's like, no, actually, that's easier. And it wasn't as easy as I expected, but it turned out to be awesome. And so the book is the letters that I got 5-6 years ago now were the thought, like the impactful thing that helped kind of set the direction. And then the conversations that we had on the live stream is what the book is built around. And so it's like what my personal stories, the dumb stuff that I did, Jen's stuff that she did, how she applied, how she learned it. And it includes the cheat codes or like the awesome shares that people on the live stream shared. We put a bunch of those in there to like kind of tie it all together.
Yeah,
So
I love that too. I mean, I've got a few of them flagged because I like them.
nice.
So Jen had said that foundation has to be built on repetitive practice of the fundamentals. So
Mm,
basically, this isn't something that you go through once and done, and it's not, this is a foundational piece. This lean, this continuous improvement is something that you do every day. It's what builds the
yes.
foundation of the relationships with yourself, with other people, and so I believe that's my take on it. Like the last S is about like reevaluating, reconnecting, like making sure that you're honoring yourself in this way. That's the way I take that. So, I mean, it's just crazy. And then Angela Lovicho, I really like this because everybody knows the golden rule, right? but she talks about the platinum rule. And she says the platinum rule is to treat others how they want to be treated. And that's more difficult because we have to care enough to be curious and to try and find out how they want to be treated. I mean,
Is
that
that
to
not
me was just like, I mean, I'm like, this stuff in here, these little nuggets, I mean, and it's just it's something I can keep going back to as well, you know? And
yes?
so I really love the fact that you were creative enough to think about taking, those lives and taking the content of all of that and putting it into a format like this, because now we all get to enjoy it and get to reap the benefits of those nuggets. I mean, they're amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the best way to, like, for me to kind of put my finger on it. Again, the intent was not to write a book. I had these things that I knew was power. And the reason I want to share this is because I think all of us have had this experience where there's something that we have that's like, man, this thing, I know it has value and I know it can help a bunch of people. But how do I do that? Right. So I was living that, and then got a lot of rejection and got a lot of rolled eyes and got a lot of, yeah, that sounds good, good luck. Like that sort of like, okay, cool. And then I find somebody and a venue that, like, wait a minute, this hasn't been done, but it's doable. It may flop, but let's do it. And then we did it. And then people start paying attention and people start contributing,
Yeah.
and then it starts growing. So, like, that's how it happened. It wasn't like there was a plan. It's just responding to what was happening in the moment, and like also not giving up and putting in the damn time and effort. Like
Yeah.
the questions, the reflection questions at the end of each chapter. That idea was sparked by Christy Powell.
Oh.
After one During one of the live streams, she commented, it's like, it'd be really nice if we had like a question list to help us think about each of the things that you're talking about. And I
Wow.
said, oh, that's a cool idea. So we started putting some questions. I put a list of questions together and I said, hey, Jen, what do you think? And we, massaged them a little bit. And that's what we said. Okay, it was an Excel, like an ugly Excel spreadsheet that we gave to whoever showed up. Like, here it is. And then when we were writing the books, like, how do we end each chapter? Hey, remember the questions? Let's put those questions in here. So again,
Yeah.
this was like this
Wow.
evolving, growing thing that resulted from the most important thing was a community sprouted from this.
Yeah.
That's the miracle that I could never have expected.
Yeah, the No
The
BS
community.
tribe, and
Yes,
yeah, and the way I met you was through there, through LinkedIn, and you have a very powerful presence on LinkedIn, and so it was kind of happenstance how all of this happened, but yeah, the No BS tribe is the way that I ended up meeting you, and I'm sure a lot of people have met you, and you've met other people through that
absolutely.
community, which is very large now, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. It continues to grow,
I
and we
keep
have,
seeing new people. I'm like, I don't know who this person is, and that, oh wow, like all these
yeah.
different people I interacting, but it's great.
Yes, it's a good time. And when we transitioned from the like 5S Love Letter live stream, started messing around with the book. We started the No BS with Jen and Jess live streams. Another like miracle gift that we received is we've gone back and watched videos. Like, when I say we, I'm talking about Jennifer Lacey and I gone back and watched like the first, when we were doing these live streams. We were horrible. Like, we sounded like chickens and squirrels chasing each other. Our client, like, we become better at communicating, but that's not the thing. The thing is, we can see the depth of vulnerability that the community has gone through. Like, at the very beginning, the things that were shared were kind of topical, right? They were about work and frustrations on the job and with people. To now, when we have our live streams, people are sharing heavy, heavy, intimate things with the group because we have, and it's on the internet, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But we've discovered this space where people are emboldened to get more vulnerable and get more authentic. And for
Yeah.
me, that's like the ultimate gift. To your point, the book helps us mend our relationship with ourselves on its best day.
Mhm.
On a regular day, it's going to help you fix your relationships with the people around you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, if any of you are interested in, being a part of the No BS tribe, I'll make sure to put links down there. LinkedIn is the space that I know is where a lot of that occurs. And then also make sure to put links to Jesse's YouTube channel because he also features his lives that he does every week as well. He streams it not only on LinkedIn but also on YouTube, and has
Yes.
some valuable information for all of you, and also the website with the links to the book. But also, before we close, there is a second book. So, would you mind sharing now, Jesse
Yes.
Hernandez, the author? What is the second book coming out? What
Oh,
can we expect?
all right. So you just triggered a recent memory. I was at the movie theater because I like to go to the movies by myself. That's like a secret indulgence that I take on a regular basis. And I saw a buddy of mine from high school, and he flagged me down. I hadn't seen him in years, and he flagged me to say, "Hey, man, what's up?" And he's looking at me. He's like, "Jess," like he's looking at me confused. I'm like, "Why are you looking at me weird, bro?" He's like, "You used to be Stifler, and now you're an author. Like, I don't know how that connects. If you know who Stifler is, bro."
Yeah, American Pie.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm like,
That is so
yeah.
funny.
Uh, and so the book, this next book the title of it is Becoming the Promise You Are Intended to Be.
Wow.
Yeah, it's heavy, and it's 20 stories from my life, from young childhood to very recent times, that they were learnings and missteps, right? The pains, the mistakes, the selfish, dirty deeds that I've done in the past, what I learned from them, and how I apply them today. Um,
Wow.
so that's like the overall summary. The thing that triggered it was I was working with Lee. He wrote my forward. He's a really good, great brother of mine here. And I was coaching him on continuous improvement stuff.
Mhm.
And somehow, some way, I shared that I've been wrestling with alcoholism and addiction for a very long time. And I shared all the arrests like the criminal legal issues that I've had in my life here.
Mhm.
And he just looked at me like, "No way." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Jess, I never, ever, ever, ever would have guessed that you had any of those situations in you." I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm living on it." Like, I was on probation the time we like probation with the law with
Yeah.
Bear County while we were having this dialogue. He's like, "No way." I was like, "Yes."
Wow.
And he says, "You know what?" A few days later, he came back. He's like, "Jess, you gave me hope for people that I wanted to give up on,
Wow.
because they're going through what you're going through, what you've been through, and I can see where you're at.
Yeah.
So they have, like, I can't give up on them." And then he said, "You need to write a book because you can give people hope. You can give family members of folks that are making bad decisions, selfish decisions, you can give them hope. And you
Amen.
can give people that are stuck in that way of like self-destructive behavior, you might be able to spark something in their heart to change or grow or try something different."
Mhm.
And I said, "Damn it, Lee, why'd you have to say it that way?" Now I have to do it. And so that's the book. That's what the book's going to have in it. And, the whole, can I give a little tease about the title?
Yeah, yeah.
So the title, Becoming the Promise You Are Intended to Be, came from I was in rehab. I was in inpatient rehab after my last arrest because I needed help to get sober and I'm too pretty to be in prison. And so I, I was going through the motions
Mhm.
of the rehab, right? Like, because I'd been through rehab a bunch of times, court ordered. And so I'm just manipulating my way through it. Well, I had an awakening. And like the biggest contributor to the awakening was one of the counselors. He called me out. He's like, "Hey, Jess," pulled me off to the side. So, "I need to talk to you." It's okay. What's up? He's like, "Jess, you show up all the time. You never miss. You show up on time. You say all the right things." He said, "Your problem isn't admitting that you're an alcoholic or an addict." He said, "Your problem is that you haven't accepted." And I'm like, yeah, whatever, bro. Like, what is it? You're just playing with words.
Mhm.
And he says, "No, What you haven't accepted is that if you continue living life the way you're living life, you will never become the promise you are intended to be.
Wow.
And just like now, I mean, it
Wow.
it was a lightning bolt. I said, "Oh,
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about." Um, and so that was like a huge anchor in terms of my trajectory.
Yeah.
It totally transformed my think. Like it forced me to, oh, like I know what you're talking about, even though I can't clearly define that.
Hmm.
I know the feeling that you're talking about, and now I know that I'm the source of the problem. And so I had to not get sober, not stop using. I had to change the way I was living.
Yeah.
So that's why the title is what it is, because it's, and that's kind of where my functioning is now, is I have to serve and share my gifts and talents for the purpose of becoming the promise I'm intended to be.
Amen to that. I mean, that is so powerful. I mean, my goodness, just that one, mic drop moment that the counselor, kind of put on you was just like, whoa. And then here you are, and you really did. You made a 180. And you've been sober and living this life and helping others ever since. And I mean, it's just amazing. And I believe that they're right. The one that you were coaching, I think his name was Lee, um,
Correct.
is correct in the fact that this is going to bring hope to a lot of people who are in your position.
Yes.
Because as you know, the addict mindset and being in that, you think that when you're in the midst of it all and you're in the deep with it, it's like that's all you see.
That's it.
It's hard for you to see that there is this other side. I mean, imagine, you're down in the dumps and someone tells you, hey, you're going to be this person that's going to touch all these lives and help all
Yeah.
these people, like whatever, because you don't see it. So
Yeah.
this book is going to help expose that side of it. Like, yeah, there's an ugly side of addiction and this disease, but there's also a recovery side. And what recovery can do to someone is powerful. And
Yes.
that's I mean, you're a big demonstration to that.
Thank you.
So I really appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to buy it as soon as it comes out. So yeah, so you gotta keep me in the loop with that. And I think your website is going to have a link to that, so I'll make sure the website is linked down below where, once it comes out,
Yes.
they'll be able to find it. So that way people, once it comes out, they'll be able to get it. So
Yes. Yes.
thank you so much for sharing your story, Jesse. I really appreciate all your time and value that you provide, not only your community, but in the mental health space. And I'm honored to be able to share this with my audience, and hopefully, all of you have found some value in this. So, if you did, just drop a couple comments, show us some love, and maybe perhaps put your nuggets. What did you get out of this interview? And as always, I thank you all for watching, and I wish you well on your mental health care journey. And I'll look forward to seeing you all next week.